guys, Goose here, and we're going to be talking about Stevie Ray Vaughan's #1 guitar in particular, although this guitar here really was my attempt to build a guitar that I could perform the repertoire of Jimi Hendrix and Stevie Ray Vaughan, which obviously is an E flat. I was kind of reticent to actually build a complete replica of Jimi Hendrix, or Stevie Ray Vaughan rather, because, you know, I just think it's silly. But this guitar kind of has all the elements of a Stevie Ray Vaughan replica, but it's obviously not sunburst, and it doesn't have SRV on the scratch plate. So that's the first kind of thing I want to say to you guys, if that's what you were expecting. I want to turn up and have a pretty unique guitar. The look, the gold with the red choice and the tortoiseshell, I thought was cool, because normally you don't see gold hardware and this kind of configuration. So it's a little bit unique, not really, but a little bit. You know, we're going to go. Well, I'm going to go through the specs of this now, but I just want to go over a little bit of the history, because, you know, Fender first made, I think with Jimmy Vaughan, they made the first signature Stevie Ray Vaughan guitar in 1992. That's when it was unveiled in NAMM, I think. And basically that was, had a chunkier neck, and it was, had the SRV black pickguard with SRV stenciled on it. I think it had Texas Specials pickups and the gold hardware, and also again the left-handed trem on a right-handed body. So that kind of got in possibly, I can't remember if it had big frets, but you can tell me if it had 6100 frets. I don't think it did, but I played a few in the shops, and basically I was never really impressed with that guitar. And it was covered in polyurethane, and it just felt a bit plasticky when I played it, and it didn't sound like I was going to get any Stevie Ray Vaughan tones out of that guitar. So it was kind of more like a tribute rather than a replica. However, in 2003, John Cruz, who was the master builder at the time at Fender, he actually produced, I think it was 100 replicas, because they were able to examine actually Stevie Ray Vaughan's guitar. There's, you can check out a video of it. I'll put it in the link, and they got some details. Now that was pretty close guitar, but I think there were some specs, like the neck was 42mm rather than the imperial measurement, which we're going to go into at the moment. So that wasn't quite right. I think they used Indian rosewood rather than Brazilian, which Stevie Ray Vaughan's would have had a Brazilian veneer neck. So there was a few things that were not quite right about it, but they got the original tuners, and they got, the wear on the guitar was pretty good. They were using a stencil technique to get this wear done. Now the John Cruz replicas are now going for a real load of money. I've seen some for £40,000, £50,000 and more. Initially I think they were between £5,000 and £10,000 when they made the first initial run. So if you bought one of them, you were lucky enough to get one of those, then you're going to be laughing now. However, I wanted to make a guitar for £1,000, and seeing as pounds is now the same as dollar, pretty much, let's say I made this for $1,000. Okay, so what has it got in it? Well, and how did I get the price to $1,000? Well, the neck cost $500, so the neck was the most important thing for me. And even then, it's still not right. You're going to find out why it's not right at the moment. Stevie Ray Vaughan's Strat. Stevie Ray Vaughan likes to think his Strat was an early Strat, but if you check out the pictures of his Strat, it had a veneer board, and the veneers at that time were quite thin. They weren't thick. They were thin veneers. So on this Navigator Strat here, you can see that this is a veneer. This, however, is a slab. Okay. So that's one thing I messed up on, because at the time I made this neck 10 years ago. This neck was made for me 10 years ago to kind of get the Stevie Ray Vaughan thing. So this would make sense, because the neck on Stevie Ray Vaughan's guitar was made in December 1962. That's when they changed to veneer boards instead of slab boards, which this is. Okay, so there I've messed up. The replica by John Cruz has the correct veneer, but it's an Indian rosewood board. Now I do have a veneer neck spare, so I am going to put a veneer neck on this and see if that makes a difference. But for now, this neck is on here. Now this has Brazilian rosewood. Brazilian rosewood was used back in the day on the 92 So on the Signature series released in 1992, they used Pau Ferrot. I think that's how you pronounce it, because obviously they had the CITES thing and they couldn't get hold of Brazilian rosewood at the time. Same deal with the John Cruz replicas, they used Indian rosewood, so they weren't Brazilian rosewood boards. So really for me, I wanted to get a Brazilian board because that was kind of like the main thing about this neck, was to have a good Brazilian board on it. 6100 Jim Dunlop frets, clay dots, and we've got a big, what they call a D profile. Okay, so this is kind of trying to replicate that larger neck. I mean, it wasn't, I don't think it was, you know, some necks that go over the top and they're just too big. This actually neck was shaped throughout the years to get it right. And it's got a beautiful sort of flame maple on there. Let's talk about the nut width. So the nut width is 1 5/8. Okay, so that's not exactly 42 millimeters. In fact, it's just under 42 millimeters. So this is what I try to do with this neck, is make that neck 1 5/8 exactly. So that was really important because of the whole thumb over the neck sort of way of playing. And Hendrix would have had a smaller nut as well on his a lot of the guitars that he played, especially the late 60s guitars that he was, you know, using, the 67, 68, 69s. So that's kind of another important feature. Obviously, the left-handed tremolo, this has had to be routed out. I'm going to show you some video of it actually being worked on at the Bass Gallery here in Camden, London. These guys do a lot of work for me, and they basically routed out this side and blocked off this side. Okay, that was important. This body had a real problem because it was routed here for a larger neck. So we had to glue in a bit of, well, the Bass Gallery glued in a bit of wood here. You know, I like to get, you know, this body was real cheap. It's an MJT body, it's a great body, but it was really cheap because it had been basically completely hacked up. But I like to get sort of stuff that's broken and cheap, and then you can kind of, you know, repair it and then get it into a working guitar again. I think that's a really good, cool thing to do. This scratch plate came with is from the year 2001, and it has Seymour Duncan Antiquities in here, so the kind of vintage Strat pickups. And this scratch plate and the pickups is actually from a Navigator, from like this. This is also 2001. So I managed to find another one of these, exactly identical, very cheap, and I put it in here. So it's got CTS ports, all the good stuff. And you know, this guitar is a work in progress, so I need to set it up and, you know, play it and adjust the truss rod, and, you know, it hasn't settled in quite yet, you know. And also the pickups, I'm not sure I'm going to stay with these pickups. This is a whole other issue, which I will make a video on C. Ray Vaughan's pickups and what I think is a close sound. And there's a few pickup winders around that are really trying to hone in on the Stevie Ray Vaughan tone. So I'm going to be really looking forward to trying their pickups in this guitar. Now there are some rumours that Van Zandt made some hotter pickups for Stevie Ray, and that's maybe why the Texas Special pickups we used and were kind of like attached to Stevie Ray Vaughan, which, you know, really they don't really capture, in my opinion, the sound, because you don't really want hot pickups. You want something which is underwound. We're using a 5-way selector switch. We've got 5 springs in the back. That's very important. And let's talk about the tuners. Now the tuners, can we see these tuners here? Now I've seen these go on Reverb for 500. Even somebody had them up the other day for £600, which is absolutely ridiculous. I got quite a few of these sets way back 10 years ago and sort of just used them on some Telecasters and stuff like that. So I've got a few sets. But I had this one set waiting 10 years for this Stevie Ray Vaughan replica, because I'm not going to pay £500, £600 for these tuners. They're just not worth it. I mean, you know, if you're that desperate, you know, what can I say? I'm sure there's a way to find them cheaper. But they're the tuners that Stevie Ray Vaughan's guitar came with. So it's a nice kind of like little kind of finish off to the kind of project. So guys, let's talk about the string gauge that Stevie Ray Vaughan was using. This is very important, maybe the most important element of playing Stevie Ray Vaughan's repertoire and also the tone. So Stevie Vaughan actually went up to a 58 on this E string. Now, you know, I'm not sure if I'm going to go to 58. I'm at 52 at the moment. Maybe, I'm not sure if Stevie Vaughan started at 58. I think it's quite possibly my favourite album, Texas Flood, was using a 52, but I could be wrong, okay? But I would hazard a guess that he was using a 52 for Texas Flood, but you guys can tell me if I'm wrong. The next two strings are actually a 38 and a 28. Now this is kind of strange because when I'm playing in the 11s, my strings also are 38 and 28. So it's kind of light. This is a bit of a light gauge. But what it means is you can really vibrate those two strings very easy in E flat. You know, so you can get some nice, you know. And also having the 52 on the bass, or the 58 if you want to go that far. You know, I see a lot of people struggle playing Rude Mood, and probably one of the reasons is because, you know, having these bigger bass strings, it makes it actually easier to play that riff. You know, and you got some kind of a bounciness on the plectrum. You got some kind of feedback happening on the plectrum that helps you play it. So that's a really important thing, is having this very big E string, but kind of almost a light A and D string. Yeah. So then we're going to go to a 19 on the G, which is, you know, it's not too bad. 19 in E flat, it's okay. You know, you can do your bends and your vibrato, and you want, you know, it's not going to be too taxing. You might have to develop a little bit of a strength if you've been playing 10s in standard though. Okay, and then we're going to go 15, and we've got 15 on the B, and we've got a 12. I'm using a 12 on the E. Now, it's quite possible that Stevie Ray Vaughan would flip between an 11 and a 12. I mean, maybe, you know, some people have said he was using a 13, and there were probably worse stages when he was using a 13. But generally, I think he was generally using an 11 or a 12 on top. Now, I actually prefer 12. I just think it's in E flat, it's not a problem, you know, to get even to do. You know, it makes a really huge difference, you know, from 12 to 11. I know it's only 1 degree, 1 cent, or whatever you want to call it, but it makes a huge difference for the tone. I've got a friend, you know, well, people like Josh Smith play 13s, and I've got a friend, Tim Ainsley, great guitarist from Ipswich in England, and he plays a standard set in 12. He plays a 12 in E, standard tuning. So, you know, there's guitar players that, you know, play these strings in standard. So a 12 in E flat, if you can't do that, guys, you need to, you know, do some weights on your fingers or something. But I think Stevie, what would happen with Stevie is maybe he would push it with a 12. He's doing a lot of concerts, and he didn't sort of look after his fingers, and that's why he had to go down to 11, you know, which is, it's going to be quite floppy in E flat, you know, it's not going to be very, you know, taunt really. So that's a thing you want to think about. Strings for me are the most important element of playing Stevie Ray Vaughan's music. If you haven't got your strings together, you're just not going to get that kind of vibe, that, you know, especially with the G string, you know, that 19 on the G string, really, there's a lot of, you know, there's more girth to the string, so it's going to just sound better, you know, through an amp. So you should really, you know, this is really the set that you really want to have. If, you know, in E, we're playing in E flat, it's not like it's in E, and, you know, so it shouldn't be too challenging. And also you're using 6100 frets, so that's going to make it easier as well to use those bigger strings. You know, if you're using vintage frets, it would be a nightmare. But with the bigger frets, they're quite tall, quite fat, it's going to be easier to vibrate the string. Stevie Ray Vaughan added the gold hardware in 1985 or 86. So that's kind of like a little feature I wanted to include in the guitar. So in conclusion, guys, this is a wicked guitar, and I can really use this to focus specifically on the Hendrix and Stevie Ray Vaughan repertoire, which I haven't really done since I was like 18 years old. So it's going to be really good to go back to that repertoire and as I said, to study it. And really, you know, having an instrument in the E flat makes it easier to listen and transcribe the music and to play it and get the vibe. So that was kind of the whole ethos behind this. Now for £1,000, you know, you're not going to get much these days for £1,000. So I really think it's a worthwhile project. I kind of lucked out on some of the gear. I got it cheap second hand, but it just goes to show you that you can actually end up with something really professional for not much money if you're prepared to kind of, do it yourself, basically. Thanks guys for checking out this video. A big shout out to the Bass Gallery and the guys down there who helped me put this guitar together. And also, if you want to find out any details, I'll put as much information as I can find in the description about Zero Vaughan's guitar, the original #1. So if you wanted to go and do what I did, you can check out those details and maybe that will help you. Until the next video guys, take care and see you soon.